Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Young Black Travelers podcast. It is your girl, Krisan, back by popular demand, and I am so ready to dive on into our main conversation with our amazing guests. So, I want you to introduce yourself to our listeners and watchers, who you are.
Hi, my name is Daniel Watson, and I am the founder and editor chief of Live It magazine.
Okay, short and to the point. I love it. But I want you to talk a little bit more about yourself, like, where you're from, your
Okay,
background, what you do
okay,
currently.
I got you. Okay, so in a nutshell, I'm originally from North Carolina. I moved up to New York when I was around 17, 18 for undergrad. And I went to school in Syracuse, a small little town called Casanova, which the school is actually currently closing, which that is another story in itself.
Wow.
Yeah, so impactful. We can dive into that a little bit later. But so I started out in commercial and advertisement in photography, and then once I graduated from there, actually took a job as a photo teacher at a high school called Mainland Pebble Hill, and I was more complacent in the aspects of, being so close to their age. So I, would normally get recognized as one of the students versus being one of the teachers. And
Mm.
so I decided to get my master's. And so originally, my plan was to move to San Francisco for my undergrad, but my parents didn't want me to. They said, "We'd rather you go to New York or Atlanta." And so I was like, "Okay, I'm still gonna follow my dream." And I said, "Okay, never been there, but I'm going." And so I applied. I submitted everything, the portfolio reviews, and I got accepted. And then so the first time I ever visit was being on the train, about to move in. And I studied fashion editorial photography, which I truly fell in love with. I've always had, an interest in fashion, but I didn't realize how much it was until I, started to meet with other creatives, other fashion designers, other photographers that had like interest. And so I feel like, that was what, 22, 23 age where it really began to shape my career in fashion, but didn't really know that it would take me where I am now. It's just the fact that
Mm.
I just knew that I wanted to shoot these elaborate, editorials and create these amazing experiences for people to gravitate towards. And um, so from that, right after I graduated, I was an art director for Williams Sonoma, which was a lot of fun because I got to see behind the scenes on a lot of the productions where the curation process was, where I was allowed to, or my job per se was hiring the talent for the actual production shoots. And so, I got to see, what the casting looked like, how to review the portfolios, which gave me
Mhm.
insight of when I was submitting my portfolios out
Mm.
there. And at that time, it wasn't sending a portfolio digitally. You had to mail your portfolio out to these agencies, which could be very costly. But
Mhm.
with that position, I also worked with the other creative directors, and I watched how they did, a lot of their mood boards for the print publication catalog that they had, and how they selected for certain things, not knowing that this again would be something later for me to really dive into. And so at that time, I was still shooting for other magazines. Really didn't have the interest of starting one or even the curiosity of it, but it was just more in a sense of just getting my name out there as a photographer, but also working as an art director. in knowing the ins and outs of that type of business. And so there was just a point where I was twiddling my fingers, or more would say, I hit a wall of frustration.
Mm.
And the wall of frustration was the ability to be stifled in your creativity, and being so young, it just I'm like, this is not it, right? This is not where I want to be. And the reason why the frustration was there was, fighting against the other creatives, the creative directors, of saying, okay, we just shot 12 pages, but yet the magazine is only going to print 4.
Mm.
And so that's the thing, we're saying, okay, we just did a 2-day shoot, heavy production, casting and everything, and now, like, this is the return. And so I said there had to be more. And so with that, my brain just started to flutter, started to go into active mode of, okay, what can I do to get around this? And so I said, well, why don't I start my own, right?
Mm.
Uh, Pronounced to me, of what would take to get there, but started to come up with different names. Had so many different names until I came up with the name Live It, because I wanted something that actually mean something to me.
Mm.
And um and so with that, Live It isn't in the sense of we're angry, but we could be,
Mm.
because of lack of representation. But LIV stands for living, and ID stands for identity. So we focus on what, breaking down what social media and social climates define what a culture is, by immersing ourselves within culture. But at that time, I didn't know how vast I would go into it. But the main reason why I wanted to focus on culture, because of um, the racism,
Mm.
that the heaviness of representation, or lack thereof, where, growing up in North Carolina, teachers calling me the N word,
Mm.
going and playing soccer in Syracuse, and dealing with racism with the parents, and dealing with racism when, but a different form, moving to California. And I can remember a story, and I would segue back into, how I got it. But one of my housemates, I met him from Thailand, and
Mm.
he's like, "Yo, yo, yo, yo," and I was like, "Excuse me, I don't talk like that. So, you have
Wow.
to come with me with a different vernacular." And so he was like, I'm sorry. He said, I learned my English from watching rap videos. And so the representation is what I'm really trying to emphasize here on in culture, is that not everybody's gonna be that black person in the movie or the commercial of what America depicts of a culture versus the world seeing what a culture is. And that's one of the things of what I wanted to start, right? And so when I created a mock cover with the name, and it was a beauty image of a black woman. And I remember because it was very profound, right?
Mhm.
At that time, I did not source the image. I don't even remember who the photographer was, but I think at that time I probably did put that reference in there. And I pitched it to my network, and I said, hey, I really want to start a publication for the creatives. I said, I really want to be able to have an open forum where we can create. There will be structure structure, but not control. I was about to say structure and control because we're trying to get away from the control. But so um, being able to give emphasis on direction of creativity, and so when I started to get a lot of feedback and from this, and I was like, okay, I have hair makeup agencies, I have scouts, I have locations. Me being a photographer myself, I said I could shoot a lot of the stuff, but also tapping into my resources, and
Mm.
and and what the crazy thing about, and I guess it's not really crazy, but the favor was everyone who I approached wanted to be a part of it. It's like, this is a great idea. So that was March 2011.
Mm,
By September 2011, I had over 20 contributors in 8 different countries, build a website that translated 75 different languages. Um, and it was just a trial. I didn't know where this was going to lead, but I just knew that this is what I wanted to do. And the next following year, we had over 300 contributors. And so from the
wow.
years going into that, people were asking for print. And I didn't know much about how to go into that. And so I'm like asking around to, other publications, and, the ones that actually would entertain me, a meeting, because a lot of this stuff is proprietary and you don't learn this in school. So it's a lot of it is experience by trial. And so I had a couple people that were really great in the process of it, and they led me to some digital sites that led to print on demand. And it was like, one of them I remember was MacLeod, which now is owned by Blurb. And what's so crazy about the full circle of that is that I worked for Blurb in San Francisco
Wow.
while I was in grad school, and they were just books. They were books for self-publishing, and my job there was to um, influence the photographers to create their portfolios. Because I was a photo major, and you're saying this is a great alternative, but not to mention the full circle around is that eventually they end up, buying MacLeod, who now they own, to say, okay, when the company was 10 employees, to now they're like over 300 and something, and 2 floors, and blah blah blah. But from that, working with so many different creatives around the world, um it began to really shape my idea of how small the world actually is. With the access to so many different people. I remember one of our first writers was from Nepal, and it's like, I still have not been to Nepal because the distance of where it is, but I would love to travel to that place. And we had a couple editors from Verona, Italy, who I'm really good friends with, and actually ended up teaching a few semesters with their departments of teaching creatives, photographers, and stylists on how to shoot for publications. I've done quite a few lectures. One that was in New Mexico. A lot of them, the other rest of them, have been at Casanova, which later years I actually was brought on on the advisory board to help shape their curriculums. So,
Mm.
um, yeah, that's a little bit just of me. I know that was a lot, but yeah. So I've been in the industry for over 18 years plus,
Wow.
marketing, advertisement, editorial, and creative,
Whew.
and as well as development. So yeah,
Just a little
yeah,
snippet.
just a little bit, just a little bit.
Oh, but those are all exciting things, and I can feel the passion behind all that you have been through and learned, and also how you're implementing it and changing your sphere, and also culturally, globally,
Yeah,
it sounds like.
yeah,
So, I can't wait to dive on in after our break. We're going to dive on in a little bit more on your brand and how travel has influenced you and how you influence your world in travel. So stay tuned, everyone. We're going to come back after our break. And we're back to the Young Black Travelers podcast. And I am so excited that you gave a little snippet. Daniel gave a little snippet of just his work in Livid magazine and all the marketing and his background and what incites him and what he wants to share to the world through his brand. And he talked a lot about what made him pursue the brand and what he wanted to see change in the industry. And I want to dive a little bit more into just that. Now we're in a world where there's a lot of Instagram and influencers, and I've seen a lot of like airlines because we are talking about travel. A lot of airlines and just those in the travel industry going towards those like the Instagram influencers and not too much on like websites and magazines and editorial. So, do you feel personally in the world of social media and micro and major influencers that prints and editorials still have a major role in the travel industry?
Yeah, that's a great question. Really, it is. I think, that's one of the things that we have been looking at for the last couple of years, how influencers have been on a rise. It's a new term, within the last maybe 2 years that it's been really developing.
Hmm.
Um, I think for the US, influencers play a really big role. I think that for on a global stance, print and publications and journalists and editors hold a lot more weight.
Mm.
I think, when you're looking in the aspects of travel and and creating a brand message with um, the vendors, I think that they're looking for a little bit more than just a post, on the social media, because you have to look at the aspects of, well, what happens after Instagram goes down? Do you have something that is substantial enough that will keep the vendors, coming back to you, where you're not just saying, oh, okay, I do a photo op here, I do a photo op. Yeah, that might
Hmm.
be nice, as far as, getting um, other people like yourself to go to it. But at the end of the day, you have to say, what are you influencing?
Mm.
To the influencer. What are you influencing? And wait for them to say what it is. Um, I mean, I can give you a little background. I'm not gonna name drop or anything like that,
Oh
but
Lord, get the
I
tea.
do I do write for quite a few influencers as a ghostwriter. I've done a lot of their branding, just because I have the experience as a journalist, as a marketer, as a creative, that I know what these other brands are looking for to help steer them to what that image is. Now, I can't speak for you when you're going into these conversations, but I could give you a pretty presentation
Mm.
of what it should be. And so I think that, as far as print and publications, our role in travel will always be there. I think that, the form of how it's delivered is one thing, but I think that we will always be there to be able to, captivate, people who are intrigued a little bit more just than a pretty picture or
Mm.
saying, here's my top 5 reasons of why XYZ. I also see that influencers are not interviewing any other creatives,
Mm.
or saying like, hey, this chef has been doing XYZ. Are they having conversations with them? Rather than the influence is just me versus the other way. Now, as
Mm.
the journalist, we're here to tell a story. It's not all about us. And I think that's the takeaway from it.
Wow. I mean, that is important to have the other being at the forefront and not the influencer, which sometimes a lot of us get sidetracked by the pretty pictures, even if they are trying to broadcast other people. the ratio of them versus the other, who are the ones who are trying to bring business and stuff and are the influence, are the culture, the
Yeah.
ratio is just lopsided a lot of the times. And I
Right.
appreciate the journalists and those who are willing to say, my name is just one strip and the rest is about whoever I'm talking about. So I
Yes.
do appreciate my editorial and my journalist friends. Shout out to you guys. You're doing
Yes.
great work out there. So that kind of segues to my next question. How does your line of work influence how you see travel? Like, how did your
Mm.
brand kind of introduce how you see travel for yourself?
Well, I think one of the things that I had to realize, and it was more like an epiphany,
Mhm,
of looking at all the content that we've been creating. So knowing that I have editors that travel around the world, everyone was traveling before I was. And I was
mhm,
making all these arrangements, for these elaborate stays, the St. James Hotel in Paris, all
mhm,
of these different things that I'm like, man, why am I not doing this, myself? And so it took, a press trip that I went on, one of my first press trips that I went on to Greece. And I think that really opened up my eyes of just the perspective of travel, but traveling in a journalistic capacity,
mhm,
traveling to four different islands within Greece, of the southern Aegean. And I was meeting with government officials, having breakfast, lunch, dinner, and having conversations about culture. And, phones weren't involved. We were having, 4 or 5 hour conversations. And who could say that you could go anywhere in America and sit with a government official for maybe 10 minutes, if that is maybe one of their PAs, you know. And so it really changed how the world, I viewed the world, saying like, oh, they're really interested in what I have to offer, but I'm also intrigued on, building this rapport, this relationship. And I think that's for me was more about connection.
mhm,
I think it was the biggest thing of connection and really feeling like I'm a part of that community. And I think that's one of the things that I really love. And I wanted to bring my team back to these things. And so we started to do uh, um, excursions with my teams. And so we would go and create these elaborate productions where we're shooting,
mhm,
beauty editorials, fashion editorials, hotel reviews, food reviews, all in a whole package that we would pitch to the Minister of Tourism for these different places. And um and so it got us to really see culture from a different perspective of working with local designers,
mhm,
for editorials, or working with local models for these things. And so really getting involved in actual community versus saying, oh, I'm going to travel there, I'm going to bring all my own models, I'm going to bring my own wardrobe.
mhm,
And in a sense where I always say, make it make sense. you know does this make sense to you, in a literal sense? And so when you're able to say, oh, I know that Greek designer, or I know that Egyptian designer, or Moroccan, whatever it may be, is that now they have a sense of ownership in the publication as well. Is saying that, now look, I was in Live It, look at my feature in Live It. And it's such a warm feeling when I get feedback from other people that we've interviewed in the past, or other countries that we have, and the amount of coverage of saying, hey, this guy came here, or his team came here, and they created something amazing. And I have to be transparent. You know, there's not that many Black publishers
mhm,
that own publications. There are more editors now, but starting out, there still isn't that many Black magazine owners that tell the story in our perspective. And it's important to me. And so that representation of going to another country and feeling welcomed, I think that really has opened up my eyes. Now, I also have to be transparent too. When I'm
Mhm.
traveling, I'm traveling, you know, on the government, so it is a different perspective of how a normal traveler would see. And so my direction is more led towards what they want me to see versus what people discover and see. And
Mm.
so, we only if we're directed, that saying, hey, we want to go where the locals go, majority of the time they're going to send us to five-star restaurants, and they're going to send us to the best hotel, and because again, they want to show the representation of the best of that country. Not saying that we don't go and venture out on our own to
Mhm.
discover and immerse ourselves within it, but that is the forefront of where we are, is that yes, we are a luxury lifestyle publication, and we feature almost everything within it in
Mm.
between.
Mm. Yes, that sounds like to have representation. Usually, that's what I've been hearing from those who uh, are in your position where they're able to get access where normal people will have to probably book flights and figure out on their own. The government is kind of stepping in, and they wish that there was more representation, not only of more publishers and those who have careers in it, but also having given access to people to some of these resources that, could benefit them or add to their travels as a whole. So it's always good to hear from someone who is in that realm where they're in that type of conversation to give us the insights, so that we, our listeners and watchers, can kind of know what's the deal, what's going on, kind of get a little
Yeah,
fly in the wall there.
yeah,
It's always
yeah.
helpful to have someone that is able to share that and add some insight to that. So thank you for that. Um, Now, I was going to ask the top three countries that you have been, but I'm going to challenge you. What is the one country that has been the most impactful for you? It could be personal or business wise. The one country that you'll pick that, yes, this has been
Mm.
a milestone for me.
I would say Guadeloupe.
Mm,
Guadeloupe is the Caribbean islands of France, which
mhm,
is nowhere near France, but they are part of France. And the reason why I say that is that um, when I was there, all I saw was people that looked like me.
mm,
And I haven't been able to travel yet to any of the African countries just yet. But for me, and also living a year in France, learning French, they speak French, and so it was a different feeling. And I kept saying, "This feels like home. This
mm,
feels like home." I said that to a lot of people when I was there. I was like, this feels like home. But one of the things that really um, did it for me was the African Museum.
mm.
So they have one of the largest African museums, I think, in the world. I think we
Wow.
spent over a few $1 billion on it. And the experience was so raw. There was nothing that was censored. So um, it was really hard. And I've seen some stuff. I've seen some stuff, but
Oh,
but
Lord.
just in the aspects of I think in the Black trauma,
Mm,
it was heavy.
mm,
it was heavy. When you have the freedom to turn away and not look at it, but knowing that the people that suffered it couldn't turn away,
Mm,
that's luxury. Um, but for me, as being an empath, it was the feeling. It was walking through the tour. It was a feeling that I could not explain. And I had left everyone in my group. I went on myself to discover, and I can tell you, by the time I was done, I couldn't get all the way through it. I think I walked out, and I sat on the curb and I just wept. I
mm,
cried. I cried. I was the only I was the only guy on this tour. And so, to show one of my sensitive side of just humanity, I didn't really care. That's
mm,
how compelled I was by it. And I think that from that, it just um, did something to me. And then going to the slave ports,
mm,
standing on a slave block and looking at where the stairs, the steps were named after African tribes of where you know um, people were stolen from. It was very powerful. It was a very powerful trip, and I would love to go back and experience it some more. And I would recommend anyone who has not traveled there to travel there.
that is including me. So I will add that to
Yes,
my list. I'm always in love with museums, especially those that are touching our own culture, because I think it helps us to learn about the land and also its power and influence on those around them. Because
yeah,
even you mentioning that being among your own and feeling like home, I felt the same way in Costa Rica, where I was just tripping. It's like talking to my own parents, and they're Jamaicans, and I was like, "Wow,
yeah,
I didn't think I would come here and think about it in such light." And then learning how they were so influential. We gotta be proud of ourselves because no matter where we
yes,
touch, it turns to gold. And I think
yes,
Guadalupe is no exceptions to that. It sounds like, and I will add that link and suggestion in our website so that all our listeners and watchers can go there and experience what you have
yes.
experienced. But wow, Guadalupe, Guadalupe. Um, Now you touch upon this. Some of the changes that you want to see representation. Is there anything else that
hmm
you'd like to see change in the travel industry in terms of how they address the Black travelers?
Well, I think the biggest thing we should be focused on is safety.
Mm,
Traveling while being black. I mean, let's be real. There are many incidents of where black travelers, also travelers who traveled alone, solo travelers, have been attacked or ridiculed, or certain type of things that um should not happen, period. The microaggressions,
mm,
where people laugh about it, but knowing in hindsight that is very serious. And I think for me, I've learned to fight my battles very, very proper. I fight like our counterparts, and use their vernacular, which
mm.
makes them even more upset. Um, but it's just, and that's, I gotta tell you, that's from growing up in North Carolina and experiencing it daily. Um, but I would say the biggest thing is safety for us. The right places to go, the right places to travel, and it's awful that we even have to say that, because um, we have the unspokens, right? Where are my hands? Am my clothes too dark? Are they too baggy?
Mm.
How am I portraying myself at this moment? Am I speaking too loud? Am I being aggressive? And those are the things that we have been conditioned to prepare ourselves for in any type of setting that would remotely offend or upset our counterparts. And it's unfortunate that we have to think that way and they don't have a clue on
Mm.
God's green earth of what that even means. And so I think that if we could get to a place of remotely of where we don't have to keep and continuously looking over our shoulders or um, looking for ways to feel less threatening, um, I think that that's where it is.
Yeah. I totally agree
Yeah,
with that. You mentioned the solo travel. Although places feel like home, sometimes,
yeah,
yes, with the counterparts, they make it even home feel like threatening. But I guess in
yeah,
America, we're used to that. So,
yeah.
but yeah, the travel
Unfortunately,
industry, unfortunately, and the travel industry can do a lot better. We have a long way to go and a lot of conversations to be had, but I'm pretty sure if Black travelers feel safe, they'll travel a lot more and feel more confident in being in places where they should be, like normal places that everyone should go to. Everyone should just feel like I should just go there, which is
right?
part of the point of travel that it's accessible, right, and safe. But our last question before we go to the closing segment. What
Okay.
advice, since we're talking to young Black travelers, so you might have high schoolers, college people who are wondering about, they want to get into your career. Maybe it's marketing, maybe it's editorials or journalism or writing, who wish to pursue those things while traveling or in traveling. What advice
hmm
would you give to those young people?
I would say the biggest thing is to ask questions.
Mm,
Um, I'm a very inquisitive person, so I like to research. My friends would pick on me and say, yeah, Daniel has full of knowledge. But it's the aspect of and the ongoing joke is like, oh, okay, he's gonna write a term paper about it. Um, and I think you have to get into that posture of just being inquisitive of about the different things. I didn't know that I was going to be led into this. It was more of my curiosity of the different things because I can remember in grad school wanting to learn how to do InDesign, and I can remember my director saying, "You don't need to learn that because you're going to hire someone for that." And not knowing that when I learned it while I was in grad school led to my job as an art director. So
mm.
you don't know. So stop listening to other people about the no's and follow your gut. I say like
Mm,
really follow your gut on it and find a mentor. I think the biggest thing is finding a mentor who is in that industry or someone is doing something similar to you that has gone a little bit further. And so where you're able to ask them questions. I think the worst thing that you can ask or say to someone who's experienced is to pick their brain.
mm,
I think because as a consultant, as a you know um, entrepreneur, everything costs. So you got to look at people's time. Say, hey, let me buy you lunch. Let me buy you coffee. Offer something to that person that you want information from, right? Where, in a sense, is saying, "All right, Daniel, I get a lot of pitches in LinkedIn, right? And
mm.
it's saying, hey, I want to know this, and then I say, well, here is my consulting fee, and I will let you know, what you want to know." And then it's the pushback of saying, oh, I thought that maybe we could just have a conversation, but you want my years of experience for free.
Hmm.
So offer me something for my time and experience to say like, hey, let's do this. And again, it goes the same thing with friends. If your friends don't respect your time, then you got to keep moving.
Wise advice. And I hope our listeners
Yeah.
and watchers are, especially our young Black travelers, are taking it in that everything has a price. It's time or money, but if you're willing to invest in it and willing to look into it and be curious, like our friend Daniel has been curious, you too could achieve you know, the smidgen of the breadth of what he's been through. So, so but thank you so much for that advice. I hope everyone's taking that all in. But I'll allow a break so that you can take it in. And when we come back, we're going to just wrap up our segment. I'll do a quick shout out and we'll play a little game, Daniel. It's not all just serious
Okay.
talk. We're
All
going to
right.
play a little game. So
Okay. All right.
stay tuned,
Sounds
guys.
good.
Stay tuned. All right, and we're back one more time at the Young Black Travelers podcast. We had an amazing conversation with Daniel from Livid. He has his magazine, he has his marketing agency, just a whole breadth of a whole career of just amazing fun and travels. And if you didn't have the chance to watch it, I need you to rewind, come back again. If you're listening or if you're watching, he dropped a lot of jewels, okay? A lot of jewels. So please, please take notes. And if you want to know where he suggests to go, you should have been watching. You should have been listening. I'm not going to spoil for you guys. I'm sorry. Can't cheat. So, with that said, I'm going to give a quick shout out to one of our followers. Her IG handle, I'll say the whole thing, A_vibe_called_blessed. She is one of our faithful followers. She has a beautiful feed. Very beautiful. She's an avid traveler. Her profile is just straight to the point. No cutting corners. She is a traveler and she loves to give good content to her followers. So shout out to you. Follow her page and show her some love. Now, the game that I promised is called This or That. So you have to pick
Okay.
one or the other. I've seen many
Okay.
times where people are like, but in this, no. It's called This
Okay.
or That. Very straightforward. Are you
Okay.
ready, Daniel?
Okay.
Okay.
Yes, I'm ready.
So, the first question: winter or summer getaways?
Summer getaways.
Summer getaways. How come?
I love the outdoors. Not saying that you can't do stuff outdoors in the winter, but I think that just being in warm weather, in the sun, it just gravitates to me more. I love being by water, swimming, jet skiing, water skiing, all of those different things.
I feel, and in the winter weather, I really feel like I need a summer getaway right now. So I will agree.
Yeah.
Summer getaways will always, well, it won't always trump. I will be careful. But in this situation, summer is usually a nice time. Second question. Now, would you go first class to one country or do coach but multi-country?
Okay, so I've done first class on a lot of countries. So I would say going coach, but multiple countries. I think,
Okay.
For me, I've always wanted to experience backpacking to countries. And, for me, it was like the sense of freedom and less restrictions. And I have not had the chance to do it. So, I don't know.
Where would you
I don't know.
backpack if you had the choice?
Honestly, I don't know. Probably probably Europe somewhere.
Mm.
One of the places that I've wanted to go was Croatia, but I
Ooh.
don't know if I want to backpack through Croatia.
Oh.
I don't know. I
Oh,
don't
our
know.
founder went to Croatia, so he'll probably tell you a little bit about what to expect. But
Okay.
okay, so
Okay.
coach but I feel you. I'm the same way.
Yep.
Multi-country is always budget friendly, and that's okay. Coach, I'll be there for a few hours, but the country, I'll be there for more. So that's what I'll say.
Yes.
Okay, so
Yes.
the third question. Would you eat with the
Okay.
locals or eat at a five-star restaurant? If you had one choice.
Okay. Okay. So I'm a fan with eating with locals. Don't
Mm-hmm.
get me wrong. I eat at a lot of 5-star restaurants, and I understand the craft of it. But man, where the locals eat, it's just a different experience.
Mm.
Just a
I
different
feel you.
experience.
It is. Like the
Yeah.
locals
I
have that
mean,
vibe.
it especially if you're going somewhere where it's a lot of street food, like Vietnam. You
Mm-hmm.
know, you can't get the same experience from eating at a 5-star restaurant versus eating on the strips. Trying
Mm.
different foods. And experiencing just being in the culture.
That's true. I
Yeah.
hear that. Wow. Eat with the locals. That makes sense. Now, the last
Yeah.
question.
Okay.
Hotels or Airbnbs?
That's definitely a toss up between the
Mm.
hotels and Airbnbs. I think it depends on the place, but I would say Airbnbs are quite a lot of fun.
Okay. Okay. So you
Yeah.
pick Airbnb. I do pick the same thing. I don't know, because maybe it's my background, but I love seeing how people kind of decorate their place, and you get to learn a
Yeah.
little bit more culture than the hotels that are more standard and corporate usually. But there are some nice hotels too, so don't get me wrong.
Well, yeah,
Yeah.
with the Airbnbs, it allows a little bit more privacy,
Mm.
in the aspects of coming and going, but also in the aspects of saying, okay, I need to go, versus saying, okay, I'm checking out in a hotel, and it just requires a bit more.
Mm.
Really does requires a bit more.
That's true. I hear that.
Yeah.
So that is our game. Thank you for following the rules, because people have not followed the rules, and it becomes a whole thing. So I appreciate that, and a little
Yeah.
insight to Daniel. So last question, well, second to last, but where
Okay.
to next? Where is your next destination that you want to or plan to go?
Okay. So my next trip, I'm planning to go to Athens, Greece,
Hmm.
and I'm going to interview a few visual artists and music artists for upcoming features.
Ooh, that sounds fun.
Yeah.
Well, I hope you
Yeah,
enjoy
it will be
yourself.
fun.
That sounds fun.
I
That
will.
sounds.
I will.
And
I have friends that live there, so it would be nice to catch up with them as well.
that's always a good thing, to catch up with people. And where can people find you if they want to not pick your brain, but they want to inquire on any consultation or just get inspiration from seeing your work? Where can people find you?
Okay, you could reach me on Instagram. I think that probably be the most conducive versus putting out my email.
Mm-hmm.
But you can find me at Daniel Editor LIV on Instagram, and just slide in my DM and saying, hey, do you have a moment? Let's chat.
That's cool.
Let's get some
That's what's up.
coffee. Let's get lunch. Yeah.
And if they actually want to look at your work on the Live It magazine and those things, where can they find those?
Okay, so the magazine is liveitmagazine.com, and our media company is liveitmediagroup.com.
Nice. So there's your man. If you need any services or you want to see his editorials and work, those are also the handles that you can check out his actual work. So I'm happy to have you, Daniel. It's been a great conversation.
Thank you.
I've learned a lot. I've been inspired, and I hope our listeners and watchers have been inspired by this as well. So I just want to remind you to just continue to support and be. We appreciate the support. First off, you've been supporting through 8 seasons. That is a lot of seasons, guys, and we appreciate it. Continue to support us by becoming a monthly contributor. We started off at Anchor.fm and we're going to still be there, but we're also going to leave it into other channels like YouTube and the likes. So check us out there as well and subscribe to us to get any future notifications on our podcast. And while you're traveling, I know COVID is a little bit down ish, but people are still sick around this time. So be mindful of your travels. Keep good sanitary practices wherever you go. And with that said, I bid you guys adieu. So thank you, Daniel, for joining us in this
Thank you.
conversation. Take care,
Thank you.
guys. Until next time. Bye. Ciao.